remember we talked about certain events in our lives are accidental because of the relations that we have. We are born to a particular generation. We are to this parents, to those sort of things. So he says that even that, all these things that are related to us, he says there are things that affect us, such as our fathers and the members of a particular city or a society. All those things are affected. And he says, this is very important, he says, there are two aspects to this. One aspect is what the person has to deal with. Could be difficult, could not be, could be easy. But what he's judged upon, this is the key, is according to his actions. This person was in this situation, and how did they act? They acted like this. This person was in that situation, how did they act? They acted the wrong way. So the idea is really, how do we act in whatever situation we're placed? Because we are able to control our emotions and do the right thing. We are. I'll give you the usual example that I use, Ben. You're driving at night, 2 a.m., coming back from the best party you've ever been. You've not been drinking, right? You haven't been drinking. It was the best party, I said. And all of a sudden, there's red light. Woo! Cops. How are you feeling now? Heart pounding, right? You bring your hoodie down, right? Just in case. Yeah, don't do that. I could tell you a story about that. The cop comes over, knocks on you open the window, he says, good evening or good night. Did you start yelling at him? Why not? You don't want to get shot. You don't want to make the situation worse. So you're going to be very polite. Good evening, officer. What seems to be the problem? He says, license and registration. You say, sure, but can I ask a question? Like, was I doing something wrong, officer? Right? You're very polite. You're not going to tell him, what the hell are you stopping me for? It happened to a friend of mine that he did what is called a California stop. Do you know what a California stop is?
Call it the Philly roll.
Okay. Yeah. So that there's a stop sign, you just kind of roll and keep going. And it was this little neighborhood, in our neighborhood, and it was like 2 a.m., 3 a.m., and guess what? Woo! Cops pull him over. And the cop says, license registration. He's like, what did I do? He says, well, did you see the stop sign? He says, I stopped, man. And the cop said, no, you didn't. He says, yes, I did. And they're arguing. And the guy says, come on, it's 3 a.m. So, I came to this, I sort of rolled a little bit, and I was gone. It's like, wait, did you slow down or did you stop? It's like, makes no difference. So the cop loses it, grabs his baton and starts hitting him on the head. Like this. Do you want me to stop or you want me to slow down? What do you think his answer was? Where's my lawyer? They got the joke. The idea is there's a difference between slowing down and stopping. Right? The point is that you can behave when you want. You don't have to fly off the handle. But we allow ourselves to fly off the handle with people that we feel comfortable with, like friends, family, brother, sister, parents. What do you mean you're telling me what to do? You don't have to love me for who I am. Right, Alex? Clean up your room. I don't want to clean up my room. Why do I have to clean up my room? Right? But if you went to, for example, a job interview, and you got the job, and they're paying you, I don't know, $100,000, and your boss comes and says, you should clean up your office, you're going to say, hell no, I'm not cleaning up my office. trust me, you're getting the mop, you're getting the towel, and you're cleaning that office. It's going to shine spick and span, right? Why? What's the difference? It tells us that depending on the situation, we can control ourselves. The Ramchal is saying we get judged on how we react based on whatever situation we find ourselves in. It's very important. Okay. So he says the following. It's also important that if a person loses a lot of money, he was a very important person, made a lot of money, and his sons were born very wealthy, right? That is, he had a lot of money, and his sons are born wealthy, and then let's say something happens. That the children become poor. Happens. Question is, what happens? How do the children deal with it? So the children are going to be affected by the actions of the parents. Correct? Do they do anything to deserve this? No. But that's how the cookie crumbles. You can complain about it. You can be mad. But that's what it is. That's your reality.
Maybe they did deserve it.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
Maybe not.
Well, say that God placed them into that family. So
Yes.
to go through that as some kind of kapara.
Or, okay, you could say that. But let's say you don't have to say that. Let's say it is just, they were just born to that, and that's what happened. The family went through this. And their children, so now, they used to have servants, and guess what? Now you're the servant. Says the Ramchal that is an aspect of the way that God watches over the world. He says with regard to children, so he says that sometimes a person is born and he's considered to be a good person because of his parents. Sometimes he gets some benefit or something negative because of his parents, and so on. He says you have to understand that those aspects play a role in human existence. And then he says it really is now another category. This is I think it's the last category there's more categories that he talks about. This one is not something that most of us have to deal with, but in every generation there are a few people who have to deal with this. What is a Yisurim? We talked about this yesterday, we talked about it before. Does anybody remember? Physical pain or spiritual pain, things that people are put through for a certain reason. So says the Ramchal that tzaddikim, righteous people, sometimes suffer for the benefit of their generation or for the benefit of the world. You hear that?
Why?
Oh, why? So he says the following. The why is very simple. The purpose of creation was not only for us as individuals to be perfected, but it's also for us as a species to be perfected. All humanity should become closer to God through completion or perfection. Which means when a righteous person suffers, his suffering has a positive effect on his generation.
How so?
People are affected by it. People look at it and they see how he's dealing with whatever he's going through, and sends a very, very strong effect on the person.
Oh, you're saying it's very rare, like it has to be
A tzaddik, yeah, it's got to be, yeah.
It's done as an atonement, though, for that generation, yeah?
But it's also to lead them towards perfection. I'm a little worried. I don't want to get into the atonement piece just yet. I know. Listen, I know that I'm walking on the plank, and I know where this is heading, and I am just doing it my way, so that I can avoid, so I can show you that this plank is fully connected, and there's two guards on both sides, and I will not fall in the water. Okay?
It's not the suffering, it's the reaction to the suffering.
That's what I want to say at this stage. So he says the following. That whoever reached at the level that he has earned olam haba, like he's right, and that other people can be perfected through his experience and be included in that. So he can actually really help others by saving others. Because of what he's going through, other people are affected by this. And they are able to earn entering the world to come through this tzaddik. That's what the Ramchal is saying.
So they're going to see his suffering and then improve themselves?
Correct. So he says, and this is really a big tikkun. Right? And how do we actually learn this? It's a Pashut Gemara, Yishai. Right? The Gemara says in where is it? In Shavuos. It says Kol Israel arevim ze bazeh. Right? We're all connected to one another, and our actions affect one another. Right? So if one of us chas v'shalom sins, it affects Klal Yisrael. It affects everybody. Michael does a mitzvah, shows up to class, boom. It affects Klal Yisrael. Right? Everything that you do affects every single person. You ever read there's the little essay, it's called The Butterfly Effect. Right? That a butterfly, what?
It's a film.
Was it? Is it a film?
They made it into a film.
Okay, no, good. So that a little flutter of a butterfly, some corner of the earth, has an effect throughout the universe. The same thing with your thoughts, your emotions, your words, and your speech. That's what we learn in the Ramchal. So since we all have an effect on one another, if you are serious and you're learning and you're coming and you're participating, you have a positive effect on everybody. And if you don't, then you have a negative effect on people. Because it sort of feeds off one another. And a tzaddik, since everybody in the generation is looking up to him, when something happens to him, whatever he's going through affects everybody. Because everybody understands that they have a share of what he's going through. Because it is our effect. There's a Gemara, and there's lots of sources on this, that when a generation misbehaves, the first people to get punished are the righteous people. And sometimes they are taken up because God doesn't want them to live through a generation that things are going to get worse, worse, and worse. He takes them before. That's what some people were saying about Rav Ovadia Yosef Zatzal. That he died early. So you say, what do you mean he was in his 90s? That's not early. For tzaddikim, it's early. And he died in a way that was showing that, things are going to get worse, and Hashem took him before things would get any worse. And they got worse. What?
How did he die?
He died because all sorts of complications in the hospital. You don't have, yeah.
Recently, like 2 years ago, 3 years ago.
Yeah, less than that.
What's gotten worse since?
Oh, so that's a separate talk. Not for the camera. Okay. So whatever we sin, it affects other people. and we do good things, it affects other people. There was a whole movement of pass it on, right? There are people in America, what? Paid forward, right? You go to a Starbucks, and you, what?
That's another movie.
Okay, I know. But I was reading this article, there's a coffee shop that they have a wall full of stickums. So that, you buy something and you write whatever you bought and you put it, and somebody is like hungry, they walk in, they just take a stickums off the wall and give it, and you can get free food. But the wall is packed. Every mitzvah that you do is sort of that way. It affects. It affects. Like watch, if you stand with a group of guys and somebody comes and asks for tzedakah, and one guy gives a shekel, another guy will give a half a shekel. Like, it sort of affects everybody. Everybody's sort of like, okay, I'll step up, I'll do it. But if, guys like, we say, hey, we need help setting up the best medrash for Tu B'Shvat, and everybody's like, I'm busy, then no one's going to say, okay. If one guy says, okay, they go, all right, I'll help you. And this guy says, this guy's it. Same thing. We had somebody, I don't want to publicize his name because I don't want to embarrass anybody, but a guy said, we should have a minyan. And he jumped in the water, and boom, we have a great minyan at the Mechina program on Mondays. That's how it works. Positive effect. Okay? It's very important. Now, so he says, when a righteous person goes through lots of troubles, and there is a lot of Yisurim, what happens? He says, listen to this. Lekaparat doro. This is to atone the generation. Atonement. And he says, and this is from a chiyuv, this is the chiyuv of the tzaddikim, that the tzaddik has to accept lovingly everything that happens to him. Why? Because he understands that what is happening to him is for the benefit of his generation. And therefore, as he does it, and he goes through this, he reaches higher levels of spirituality. That is, when he is going through the tough times, and he's atoning for the sins of the generation, and he is doing it lovingly, and he's accepting it, and he's not, losing his mind, then, says the Ramchal, he reaches a higher level of holiness and higher level of perfection. And he says that he becomes one of the leading people in the world to come. He moves to the front of the line, as we say. Okay? And there are some things that can happen to a tzaddik, says the Ramchal, that is even on a higher level. He says because his generation deserves a big punishment and deserve to die, and through his suffering, he atones for them and saves them not only in this world, but also helps them in the next world. And he says these are the Yisurim that happen to the greatest Hasidim. This is something that is very, very high. And it has to do, he says, כבר היה צריך לאדם שיסבול קצת צער, לכשיגיע הוא וכל העולם עמו אל השלמות. So he says that really a person has to understand that he has to go through suffering in life. We all are going to go through suffering in life. We're not going to coast. There's things that are going to happen to us that are not going to be easy to deal with. Anybody here disagree with that? Anybody?
Our suffering, though, isn't to the same purpose as the
What?
When someone like you or whatever, when I suffer, it isn't, I'm not suffering for the same reason that tzaddik is suffering.
Absolutely not. Correct. The
I'm
tzaddik.
suffering for my own sins.
Correct. Or you're being purified.
Right.
Not every suffering is for atonement. It is every suffering is for perfection.
It's all response to me.
Correct.
To a certain level.
Correct. For him, it's a different level. For a tzaddik, it's a different level. Yes. Now, and what is the suffering? It comes from, this is for you, Netana. It comes from the two ways that God relates to this world. Either God shines his light upon us, or he removes that light. Those are the two options. When God shines his light upon us, things appear to be, birds are chirping, the bees are bumbling, right? The bushes are flowering.
I don't know, bees bumble.
Well, they're called bumblebees, right? It means they bumble. Don't they bumble in Australia? You know that there are bees are not kosher, right? Correct? Can't eat bees.
Oh, you ruined my lunch.
I know. And hopefully dinner. But in honey, you have pieces of the bee in the honey. Sometimes their legs break off in the honey. So the question is, how can you eat honey if it has pieces of things that are usher to eat? No?
They dissolve.
They dissolve. Oh. But there's a story in the Gemara that says that, I don't remember what king was, he preserved a baby in honey. Like put it complete and it preserved the baby.
Because the whole thing's stay whole.
So the honey has the following idea. Whatever you put in it whole, it preserves it the way it is. But if something that is pieces, it disintegrates it. That's how it works. So why do we dip apple in honey on Rosh Hashanah?
To remind us to stay whole.
No. To remind us that honey, the same way that honey breaks down something that isn't complete, no Jew is a full evil person. Every person is, he's got mitzvahs, he's got not. So it's incomplete, pieces. And the honey is going to break the negative pieces and leave only the good. So, all the bad things that happen in the world, a lot of it we caused. Because of the way we live our lives. The Torah is full of stories of generations of people who do not live according to the way that God wants to run the universe. They steal, they lie, they chase chicas calientes, right? Somebody will translate later. Anybody here Spanish major? You don't need a Spanish major for that.
No hablan nada.
Lots and lots of reasons that people don't live according to the Torah. And he says really that in human history, the darkness or the hiddenness of Hashem occurred more than his revealing. And it is really a testimony of how low we are. We are really in the bottom of, the material that we could get. Can we go any lower? I'm sure. Should we? Absolutely not. Please don't. So he says, therefore, through the reincarnation, that the souls, right, the person dies, then the soul comes back in another body. It says, through this, people receive the punishments that they deserved in a previous life. Because sometimes people do something that is so horrific that it's just not enough going once to get punished. You're going to come back again and get punished. So he says that the shlamim v'chashuvim, right? But the way that it works is that since punishment needs to be given, the tzaddikim, the righteous, can take on the punishments for that generation to save us from going through what we actually deserve to go through. And that's what tzaddikim do. It's amazing. Now, because since they are complete and perfect and deserve only good, and they're only willing to accept the suffering for others, therefore the aspect of judgment is taken care of. Okay? All right. Now, we'll move on to talk about the reincarnations of the soul. Because that's what everybody's here for, right? Everyone wants to know, how does that stuff work? And then am I coming back as a chicken? I don't know. I don't know, but there might be a good chance. He says there's another aspect to the way that God runs the world, which is that one soul shall come to the world several times in different bodies. And through this process, it could perfect itself in one time what it ruined in a previous time. Okay? So, we have been here before in the tunnel. And we are here again. Some of us, it's our 247th trip. Some of us, it's not. Who knows what number? But you're coming back until you complete, repair, perfect. You choose the verb that you want, the things that you need to repair. There's no getting out of it. Because if you don't do it here, where do you do it? Gehenna. Which is better? I don't know. I don't know. I'll tell you why I say I don't know. Gemara says, it teaches that a person spends in Gehenna no more than, 11 months. How long is your life, usually?
120 years.
120 years, 70 years, 80 years, right? It's possible that, you can get everything done in 11 months. It's much more intensified, much more, okay? I don't know.
I have a question about Gehenna and the difference between Gehenna and here. Wouldn't it be if we have X job to do and we don't do X job, then we have to finish it in Gehenna?
Well, what's the job?
Exactly.
You're not Hercules. No, I mean it in the religious sense. Hercules had tasks, right? He had to kill this animal, had to do. That's not it. Your task here, what was the purpose of creation? It's for God to bestow His goodness upon you. And in order for you to get this, the deal was, right, that we would reach a level of perfection, and that once we reach that level of perfection, we would get the good that is related, proportional to our level of perfection. And so, in order to get to that level of perfection, you have to perform the mitzvahs, right? So, if you don't do the mitzvahs, guess what? You haven't reached that level of perfection. So, how many mitzvahs are there? 613, right? So, how many do you need to perform? How many you need to perform?
Whatever's applicable to a male.
No.
You can't do the women's mitzvah.
Yes, you can.
Learning them.
By learning them. Or you're going to come back as a woman.
Fun.
Yes.
Why is that?
He already had his.
You already had the women.
He had his already. He had to.
That's why I'm little.
But you have to come as a Kohen, right? Because there are mitzvahs only for Kohanim.
No, because the also was only applicable when we first went into the land of Israel.
Yeah, but by learning them, you fulfill those mitzvahs. There's another idea. What about a king? There are mitzvahs of a king.
Right, but
So,
now we're gonna come back to the-
so if you're not, well, you're supposed to.
I'm letting those know.
What?
I'm letting those.
So then you're gonna check.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So when you get up there,
Mazel tov.
Oh.
so there's this idea in the Arizal. The Arizal says that, and the Ramchal talked about it, if you remember, that we get a spiritual body, right? And when you get the spiritual body, it'll be missing pieces for every mitzvah that you didn't perform. So like you'll walk by and you're like, "Hi, everybody." It's like, he didn't do this mitzvah, he didn't do that mitzvah, he didn't do that mitzvah. He's missing 3 fingers. Right? And it's like, oh, what happened? Oh, that's what happened. You don't want to walk around without an ear in Olam Haba. Right? Because you get forever there, right? 365 mitzvahs. Negative mitzvahs, 248. Positive mitzvahs, right? So 240. They're all connected. You have to do all of them. or learn them.
From what? Shulchan Aruch? What? From where?
Just learn them.
Anyway.
Shulchan Aruch doesn't cover all of it.
No.
The Rambam
In
does.
the Gemara, you guys.
Yeah, if you learn Gemara and you learn all the mitzvahs, you're set. You're gonna glow. What?
Learning it just as good as doing it.
Because you might not be able to do it. For example, there's a mitzvah of pidyon haben, right? So the firstborn son, you have to give money to a kohen and redeem it. What if you have a daughter? So you haven't fulfilled that mitzvah. So what are you going to do? So now you're going to have to come back. What if you've never divorced a woman? It's a mitzvah to divorce a woman. Don't tell her that. Like, honey, I'm going to do a mitzvah. Here's your walking papers. Beat it. Don't do that. But it means that if you learn the mitzvahs of Gitin, which we learned last month, right? Remember? All the sugya of giving a get with a shaliach and not a shaliach, and how, what's in a get, what's not in a get, all those things. You've done, right? Or chalitza, right? There's a mitzvah of chalitza. There's lots and lots of, yes. 1 second, I'll tell you.
So, Moshe Rabbeinu had 2 sons.
Moshe Rabbeinu had 2 sons.
Did he have any daughters?
Did not have any
So he
daughters.
didn't perform the mitzvah of be fruitful and multiply.
No,
Say,
no. No, don't run too fast.
I'm asking.
I know what the question is. There's a Shev Shmaisa on this. Shev Shmaisa is a very, very important book. In the introduction, he talks about this question. And he says that there are 2 ways to answer this question on Moshe Rabbeinu. Right? There's a discussion among the rabbis, Mike, whether everybody knows that we have a mitzvah to be fruitful and multiply. Correct? According to the Torah, how many children do you have to have?
Daughter, son or daughter.
So you say a son or a daughter. That's Shammai. And there's another opinion, 2 sons. So on the tzad that it's 2 sons, he's covered. On the tzad is a boy and a girl. It's something else. So, but there he brings that it was actually a specific shaila that Moshe Rabbeinu asked the Kadosh Baruch Hu, because remember he's separated from his wife in order to receive prophecy. So since he was holding in a very high level, and that he wasn't with his wife throughout the 40 years in the desert, he had permission from the Kadosh Baruch Hu not to have any more children. Because really the question is this. They all converted in Har Sinai. They all became brand new people, which means that his children were not really his children. So it's as if he never had children. So then the Kadosh Baruch Hu says, you don't need to. Don't worry. I'm Padring, you're Moshe Rabbeinu, you're in a different level, and it's fine. That's what the Shev Shmaisa says. So look in the introduction. I'll give you a nice headache. It's towards the beginning. All right, I see that people are coming in for mincha. Let's stop here for mincha and continue tomorrow.